Have you ever stopped to wonder how you became, well, you? It's a huge question, right? Well, today we're going to dive into the minds of four absolute giants who tried to create the very roadmap of human development. We're talking everything from our most basic instincts to our highest morals. So let's get into it.
I love this quote from the baseball legend Satchel Paige. It just gets right to the heart of what we're talking about today. I mean, is development really just about the number of candles on your birthday cake? Or is it something deeper, like the stages you move through, the challenges you overcome, and how your entire way of thinking changes over time?
All right, so here's our game plan. First up, we've got the classic showdown, Freud versus Erikson, battling it out over what really drives our personality. Then we'll pivot to Piaget, a guy who is totally obsessed with how we think. And from there, we'll see how Kohlberg took those ideas and used them to map our moral compass. And don't worry, we'll make it all real with some classic, hands-on examples.
So, our journey kicks off with one of the biggest debates in all of psychology. At the heart of it is this question. Are we just creatures of raw, unconscious instinct, like Sigmund Freud believed? Or are we shaped more by our social world and our incredible ability to reason, which is what his one-time follower, Erik Erikson, argued?
Okay, let's start with Freud. His big idea, the one that completely shook up psychology, is called psychodynamic theory. And the core of it is this: so much of who we are is actually hidden from us, buried deep down in our unconscious mind. He was convinced that our personalities are basically forged in the fiery conflicts of our earliest childhood years.
So deep inside Freud's theory, there's this part of our mind he called the id, and you can totally think of it as the bad boy of the whole system. It's that chaotic, illogical, kind of animalistic part of us that's driven by just one thing: pleasure. It wants what it wants right now. And according to Freud, our conscious mind, he called it the ego, is in this constant battle, trying to manage the id's wild demands and keep it from running the show.
All right, now let's bring in Erik Erikson. He actually started out as one of Freud's followers, but he eventually broke away with a really radical new take. See, Erikson just couldn't buy that we were just slaves to our instincts. He was what we call an ego psychologist. What does that mean? It means he put his faith in the power of our rational, reasoning mind, the ego, to help us successfully navigate the messy, complicated world around us.
And this table just lays out the difference perfectly. So where Freud was all about psychosexual stages, driven by that wild id, Erikson was focused on psychosocial stages, driven by the rational ego. For Freud, it was all about raw instinct. For Erikson, it was about reason and control. But, maybe the biggest, most game-changing difference is this. Freud's theory pretty much wraps up after childhood. Erikson, he said no way. He argued that we keep on developing, changing, and growing across our entire lifespan.
So Erikson mapped out these 8 stages, and each one is defined by what he called a psychosocial crisis, basically a major turning point. Think about it. In infancy, the big challenge is learning to trust the world. Way down the line, in late adulthood, it's about looking back on your life with either a sense of integrity or, well, despair. And smack dab in the middle, during those teenage years, is the one you've definitely heard of, the famous identity crisis, that messy, confusing time when we're all just trying to figure out who we are.
Okay, let's switch gears to our next major player, and you'll see how these ideas start to connect. So while Freud and Erikson were wrestling with personality, the why behind what we do, this Swiss psychologist, Jean Piaget, came along and asked a totally different kind of question. He wasn't as interested in the why. He wanted to know how. How does a child's mind actually work, and how does it change as they grow?
So Piaget came up with these 4 universal stages of cognitive development. It all starts with babies just learning through their senses and actions. Then, as toddlers, we hit the pre-operational stage, where we're using language and symbols, but logic, not so much. That really starts to kick in during the concrete operation stage, and finally, from around age 12 on up, we get this amazing ability to think abstractly and hypothetically. And here's a little fun fact. Piaget's research was, well, famously informal. A lot of these world-changing ideas came from him just carefully watching his own kids play. How cool is that?
But the story doesn't stop with just how we think. The next piece of the puzzle comes from Lawrence Kohlberg. He basically took Piaget's stage-based ideas and applied them to something incredibly complex: our moral compass. He wanted to figure out how our understanding of right and wrong actually develops over time.
Kohlberg's big idea was a 3-level framework for how our morality grows. And here's a key concept. Just like Piaget and Erikson, he saw these stages as epigenetic,
Now, that's a fancy word from biology, but all it really means is that each stage has to grow out of the one that came before it. You can't just skip a level. It's like climbing a ladder of moral reasoning. You have to go one rung at a time, from the most simple to the most complex.
Okay, that's a lot of theory, I know. But what does any of this actually look like in the real world? Let's take these big, abstract ideas and make them super concrete with a couple of classic examples.
All right, here is a classic test from Piaget. I want you to picture this. You've got a tall, skinny pitcher of water, and you pour all of it into a short, wide pitcher. Now, if you ask a 5-year-old, did the amount of water change? What do you think they're going to say?
Well, a young child who hasn't developed what Piaget called conservation will look you right in the eye and say, of course it changed. The short one has less water. They can't yet grasp that the actual volume stays the same, even when the container's shape is different. Mastering this is a huge cognitive milestone.
And hey, here's a super handy memory device to help you lock this in. The ability to understand conservation and the ability to count in your head both pop up during the concrete operation stage. All three start with a C. Pretty convenient, right?
Here's another perfect little example from Piaget's pre-operational stage. When a kid says something like, "The rain is following me," they're not trying to be the center of the universe. They're showing what Piaget called egocentrism. And it's not about being selfish, it's just a genuine inability to see the world from any perspective other than their own. Now let's turn to Kohlberg's most famous tool, something called the Heinz dilemma. It's a hypothetical story designed to get at the heart of our moral reasoning. But here's the crucial part, the thing you have to remember. Kohlberg did not care if you said yes, steal it, or no, don't. The only thing he cared about was your why, the reasoning you used to justify your choice.
And this table just nails it. At the first level, the pre-conventional, it's all about avoiding punishment. He'll go to jail. Simple. At the next level, the conventional, it's about fitting in and following social rules. He should do it because that's what a good husband is supposed to do. But at that highest level, the post-conventional, the reasoning shifts to universal ethical principles. He should steal it because a human life is more valuable than property. Interestingly, Kohlberg believed that fewer than 40% of us ever reach the spinal level of moral reasoning.
So, after all these years, why are we still talking about Freud, Erikson, Piaget, and Kohlberg? Well, because their core ideas didn't just stay in textbooks. They fundamentally changed how we see ourselves, how we raise our kids, even how we structure our societies.
So let's boil it all down to the big takeaways. From Freud, we got the revolutionary idea of the unconscious mind. From Erikson, we learned that development is a lifelong journey, and he gave us powerful concepts like the identity crisis. Piaget completely changed education by showing us that kids are active little scientists, not just empty jars to be filled with facts. And Kohlberg gave us a framework for understanding that even our moral compass develops in a structured, predictable way.
So, these amazing theories give us a kind of map of the human journey. They show us the paths we've probably already walked and maybe hint at the road still ahead. But they also leave us with a really powerful question to think about. Now that we have the map, can we become better navigators of our own lives and maybe help guide the lives of the people we care about too? Something to chew on.